You might not hear about Djibouti very often, but it has a huge international presence, especially when it comes to military activity. In fact, this small nation hosts military bases from some of the world's most powerful countries. But why does Djibouti have so many foreign military bases, and what makes it so important? Let's dive in. First, let's talk about Djibouti's strategic location. It's positioned at the Horn of Africa, on the western side of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Now, this strait is the narrow waterway that connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, which then flows into the Arabian Sea. This location makes Djibouti a critical point for maritime traffic, especially for cargo ships traveling between Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Over 20,000 ships pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait every year, carrying everything from oil and consumer goods to raw materials. Any disruption here, even for a few hours, could lead to massive economic and security impacts around the globe. This is why major powers are keen to keep the area secure, and why Djibouti, being right at this strategic choke point, is the perfect place to establish a military base. So, how did Djibouti end up with multiple foreign military bases? It all started in the late 1990s and early 2000s, as the global fight against terrorism intensified. The US and other Western countries recognized the need for secure bases to launch anti-terrorism operations, particularly after the September 11 attacks. The United States established Camp Lemonnier in 2002, its largest permanent base in Africa, which was initially intended for counterterrorism operations. From here, they could easily monitor and respond to threats in neighboring countries, like Yemen and Somalia, where terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab have operated. But the US isn't the only nation here. France, Japan, China, Italy, and Spain have all established military bases in Djibouti. So, why are so many countries interested in having a base in Djibouti? Each country has its unique reasons, and it's often driven by a mix of economic and security interests. Let's break down some of these nations' motivations. 1. United States. The US, as we mentioned, is primarily focused on counterterrorism. They use Djibouti as a base to conduct surveillance and drone operations in Yemen, Somalia, and other nearby areas. Camp Lemonnier is critical for the U.S. military's African Command, AFRICOM, because it gives them a strong presence near the Middle East and East Africa. 2. France. Djibouti was once a French colony, so France has had a long-standing military presence in the region. Even after Djibouti gained independence in 1977, France maintained a base here. The French government sees Djibouti as a way to protect its interests in Africa and the Indian Ocean and, like the U.S., uses the base for regional security. 3. China's presence in Djibouti is one of the most recent, and perhaps the most talked about addition. China opened its first overseas military base here in 2017. Officially, the base was established to support Chinese anti-piracy operations and peacekeeping missions in Africa. But it's also part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to expand Chinese influence through trade and infrastructure investments. Having a base in Djibouti strengthens China's ability to protect its economic interests in Africa and along critical shipping routes. 4. Japan has also set up a base in Djibouti, its only permanent military installation outside of Japan. This base supports anti-piracy operations and also allows Japan to protect its shipping routes, as Japan relies heavily on imported oil and goods that pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. 5. Other nations. Italy, Spain, and other European nations also have a presence in Djibouti, often in the form of smaller installations or contingents that contribute to multinational efforts, like anti-piracy and humanitarian missions. Having multiple military bases in such a small country brings Djibouti significant economic benefits. The government charges millions of dollars in annual rent for each base. This revenue supports infrastructure development, job creation, and economic stability in Djibouti. In fact, about 5% of Djibouti's GDP is generated from these foreign military leases. This income has allowed Djibouti to invest in its infrastructure, such as ports, airports, and roads, making it a growing hub for logistics and trade in East Africa. However, some critics argue that the reliance on military base income can make Djibouti too dependent on foreign powers, which could impact its ability to make independent decisions on the world stage. But having so many foreign bases also comes with its challenges. For one, Djibouti is now a highly contested space where global powers' interests overlap. The US and China, for example, have very different political and military agendas, and with both having bases in close proximity, tensions can arise. There have been reports of minor incidents, such as alleged laser targeting incidents between the US and Chinese military personnel. And while there haven't been any serious clashes, having multiple major power stations so close to each other always carries some risk. So, why are there so many military bases in Djibouti? It comes down to a mix of strategic geography, security interests, and economic opportunities. Djibouti's location at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is simply too valuable for global powers to ignore, and its government has capitalized on this by renting out land to foreign militaries. However, the heavy foreign military presence is a double-edged sword. It brings economic benefits but also increases geopolitical risks. Will Djibouti continue to navigate this tricky balance of hosting multiple foreign powers? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more insights into global hotspots and strategic regions around the world. See you in the next video.